Hey babe. I need a little time with my ex Chris. Just a couple days. Hope you understand. Slightly smiling face. That's what she sent me. A smiley face. Like she was asking me to pick up milk on the way home. Like 2 years, 8 months of shared space, and every quiet sacrifice I'd made to build something real with this woman could be dissolved with a smiley face and a casual hope you understand. My name is Derek. I'm 31 years old. I work in logistics. I own rent, but it feels like own. A 2-bedroom apartment in Atlanta that I bled for, saved for, and cried in a parking lot over the day I signed the lease. And on a Thursday night, while I was standing at my stove stirring Monica's favorite pasta, her name lit up my screen and rearranged everything. I need to take you back before I take you forward, because this story doesn't start with that text. It starts long before Monica. It starts with a 14-year-old version of me watching my mother, Carolyn, smooth over her own heartbreak before anyone in the room could notice it. She had this way of absorbing pain quietly, folding it into herself like tucking in a shirt, and then smiling and asking if anyone needed anything. I grew up thinking that was love. That love meant endurance. That if you stayed patient enough, quiet enough, steady enough, eventually the other person would recognize what they had. My mother gave everything to people who gave her just enough back to keep giving. She called it devotion. My brother Marcus called it a slow bleed. I didn't understand what he meant until I was standing at a stove at 11:47 p.m., reading a text with a smiley face. I turned off the burner. I looked at the table, 2 plates, candles, the wine she liked. I sat down. I didn't text back. I didn't call. I just sat there for 4 minutes in complete silence. And in those 4 minutes, something inside me stopped negotiating. I picked up my phone and called Marcus. Hey, you still have that storage unit? She didn't come home that night. And the first thing I saw the next morning wasn't an apology, it was a selfie from his car. I woke up at 6 a.m. the way I always do, automatically, no alarm, the way you do when you've spent years making sure someone else's morning runs smoothly. I reached for my phone expecting maybe a, sorry I didn't call, I'll explain everything. Instead, Monica's Instagram story was already up. Fresh. Posted at 5:53 a.m. She was leaning out the window of a white BMW, hair blowing, sunglasses on, laughing at something off camera. The caption read, "Spontaneous energy only son." I knew that car. 3 months before this moment, Monica had left her laptop open on the kitchen counter while she was in the shower. I wasn't looking for anything, I was hunting for the charger cable she borrowed and never returned. The screen was showing a Google Maps search, Chris Harmon, Charlotte, North Carolina. A condo building in Uptown. I'd registered it the way I register everything. Quietly, automatically, the way a man raised in a chaotic household learns to read a room fast because sometimes it's a survival skill. I closed the laptop. Said nothing. Filed it. I'm telling you this because I need you to understand that nothing that came next was a reaction. It was a conclusion. A conclusion I'd been building evidence for across months of small moments I'd been too loyal, or maybe too afraid, to add up out loud. I screenshot the Instagram story. I opened a folder on my phone I labeled, simply, information. I got dressed. I went to work. I answered emails. I ate lunch. I performed normalcy with such precision that my coworker Janelle looked at me mid-afternoon and asked how Monica was doing. I smiled. She's having a great time. Janelle tilted her head slightly. You okay? I said, better than I've been in a while actually. And the strange thing was, I meant it. On my lunch break I called my landlord Mr. Okafor. Hey, I have a question about removing someone from the authorized occupant list on my lease. I wasn't snooping when I opened her side of the closet. I was packing. And that's when I found the box with his name on it, in her handwriting. I want to be precise about the order of things because people are going to want to call this impulsive. It wasn't. I came home that evening, changed out of my work clothes, and stood in the middle of my bedroom for about 60 seconds just looking at the space. Her side of the closet. Her skincare collection lined up along the bathroom counter like a small city. Her throw pillows on my couch, the ones she'd bought because she wanted the apartment to feel more like hers. I remember the day she said that. I'd smiled and nodded. I hadn't said what I was thinking, which was, it already feels like mine because I built it. I swallowed that. Filed it. The way I filed everything. I pulled her clothes off the hangers methodically, folding each piece the way she always complained I couldn't do. There was something almost meditative about it. The folding, the stacking, the careful organization of someone else's life into boxes. I wasn't angry. I was clear. There's a difference. Anger is loud and makes mistakes. Clarity is quiet and does not. Then, at the back of the top shelf, behind a row of shoeboxes I'd never touched out of respect, I found it. A box. On the side, in Monica's looping, familiar handwriting, Chris, summer pics. I opened it slowly. Printed photographs. Monica and Chris at a beach I didn't recognize. At a concert. At a birthday dinner, and I felt my chest tighten because I recognized the restaurant. It was the weekend she told me she was visiting her cousin in Savannah. I closed the box. Taped it shut. Placed it on top of the pile. Then my phone buzzed. Monica, miss you babe, hope you're not lonely, LOL, face blowing a kiss. I typed back 4 words, don't worry about me. Then I kept packing. I packed 2 years of her life into 6 boxes. Took me 3 hours. It should have taken longer, but I'd been rehearsing this without knowing it for months. I worked across 2 evenings with the kind of focus I usually reserve for deadlines. Her skincare collection came down first, each bottle wrapped carefully, placed upright so nothing spilled. Her Bluetooth speaker. Her journals. The scented candles she burned constantly that I'd stopped mentioning gave me headaches. The throw pillows. A small succulent she'd named Gerald that I'd honestly grown fond of. Gerald went in box 3. I wished him well. Somewhere in the second evening I found a birthday card she'd written me 8 months ago, tucked inside a book on my nightstand. I read it once. You make me feel at home. I folded it carefully and placed it in her box. She'd need it for context someday. What I wasn't prepared for was how much space appeared. My bookshelf, which Monica had relocated to the hallway because it disrupted the flow of the living room, was back where it belonged. The coffee table breathed. The bathroom counter had actual surface area. I stood in the doorway of my own bedroom and felt something I hadn't felt in 8 months. Like the apartment remembered me. I need to tell you something about why I built this place the way I did because it matters. I grew up in a 1-bedroom apartment with my mother Carolyn, my brother Marcus, and a rotating presence of men who never quite stayed. I watched my mother rearrange her entire personality around whoever was in the room, shrinking her preferences, her music, her space, because she believed that accommodation was the same thing as love. I signed my lease at 29 and cried in the parking lot alone. Not from sadness. From relief. From the pure physical sensation of something being finally, permanently mine. And then I handed half of it to someone who was already planning her exit. I stacked the boxes by the door. Took a photo. Then searched the address I'd memorized months ago without meaning to, a condo building in uptown Charlotte. She called 7 times. I let every single one ring out. On the 8th call, I picked up and said 3 words that silenced her completely. Saturday morning I rented a small cargo van from a place 2 blocks from my apartment. The guy behind the counter made small talk. I smiled and answered. I was operating on a frequency nobody around me could hear. I loaded the 6 boxes one by one, stacked them securely, and pulled onto the interstate headed north. 2.5 hours to Charlotte. I know because I'd looked it up the night before, not to calculate the drive but because part of me needed the destination to be real. Needed the action to have coordinates. I want to tell you about Monica and Chris, because you deserve the full picture before you judge any of this. Monica and Chris had dated for 3 years before me. He was a real estate investor, Charlotte money, uptown condo, white BMW. Their relationship hadn't ended because they were wrong for each other. It ended because Chris wouldn't commit. He wanted Monica available, just not permanently. She'd walked away with feelings she never fully processed and met me 4 months later at a mutual friend's barbecue. I was stable, present, consistent. Everything Chris hadn't been. She told herself she was healed. But she kept the shoebox. She kept his number saved as C. And every few months when he texted, she felt that pull she'd never properly buried. The trip wasn't spontaneous. She planned it 2 weeks out. Bought new outfits. Drafted and deleted the text to me 5 times before sending it at 11:47 p.m. because she knew I'd be tired and less likely to push back. She added, "Hope you understand," because she'd already decided she didn't need me to. I pulled up to Chris's building. Glass lobby, doorman, the whole thing. I carried each box to the front entrance and stacked them neatly on the curb. I attached 1 note card to the top box. It read, "These belong with you, Derek." I got back in the van. No music for the first hour. Just road. Somewhere around Spartanburg, I turned on jazz, old Coltrane, the album I'd stopped playing because Monica said it was too much. I turned it up. My phone lit up through CarPlay. Monica. I watched her name pulse on the screen. I let it ring. It stopped. Started again immediately. I kept driving. She called 8 times total. When I finally picked up, I said 3 words. The line went completely silent. I answered somewhere on the outskirts of Atlanta, about 20 minutes from home. Monica's voice came through the van speakers immediately, sharp, disbelieving, pitching upward the way it did when she felt a situation escaping her control. Derek, what is going on? My stuff is outside Chris's building. What did you do? I kept my eyes on the road. I helped you move. Silence. Excuse me? You said you needed time with him. I figured it'd be easier if your things were already there. Are you serious right now? I meant like 2 days, Derek, not, this is insane, you can't just. I know what you meant, Monica. I heard her breath catch. I just stopped pretending I didn't. I told her everything calmly and in order. The authorized occupant paperwork had been updated with Mr. Okafor. The Wi-Fi password had been changed. Her key would no longer work. I told her I genuinely hoped she found what she was looking for, and I meant it, not sarcastically, but the way you mean something when you've finally accepted that what someone else is looking for has nothing to do with you. Then I said goodbye. And I hung up. I sat with the silence for about 3 minutes. Then my phone buzzed again, an unknown number. I opened the message. Bro, I don't know what's going on, but this isn't what it looks like. It was Chris. I stared at that text in my parking garage with the van engine ticking as it cooled. I thought about not responding. Then I typed, "You don't owe me anything." She does. Good luck, man. He replied within a minute, "For what it's worth, I didn't know she hadn't been straight with you. She told me you two were basically done." I saved the screenshot. Not for revenge. Not to post it anywhere. Just because it completed a picture I'd been assembling for a very long time. I went upstairs. I was in bed by 9:30 p.m. I slept 8 uninterrupted hours, the best sleep I'd had in months. The next morning, Mrs. Patterson from downstairs knocked on my door holding a dish wrapped in foil. "Made too much cornbread," she said. Then she looked at me carefully. "I heard you laughing on the phone last night. First time I've heard that in a while." Her best friend called to yell at me. Halfway through, she went completely quiet. Then she said something I didn't expect. "I need to tell you about Mrs. Patterson before I go further, because she matters to this story more than she knows. Evelyn Patterson had lived in the unit below mine for 3 years. She liked me from the beginning, always said I was quiet in the right way. When Monica moved in, Mrs. Patterson had been cordial but watchful. Twice she'd heard raised voices late at night drifting through her ceiling. Monica's voice sharp and dismissive, mine low and measured, always de-escalating. She told me once, under the pretense of returning a misdelivered package, that I looked tired. Not the sleep kind, she'd said. I'd smiled and said I was fine. She'd nodded the way women of a certain age nod when they know you're lying but respect you enough not to press it. She went home that day and, I found out much later, prayed for me. That cornbread breakfast was the first meal I'd eaten in my apartment in 2 years that felt entirely uncomplicated. 3 days after the delivery, Monica showed up at my door. She'd driven from Charlotte. She knocked with the quiet confidence of someone who expects automatic entry. It didn't open. She knocked again. I opened it, calm, showered, rested. She was still in Chris's hoodie. She looked like she hadn't slept properly in days. She tried guilt first. "I just needed closure, Derek, that's all this was." Then reframing. "You completely overreacted and you know it." Then when neither worked, she softened. Her eyes filled and she said she missed me. That she'd made a mistake. I let her finish. Then, "I believe you miss me, Monica. But I think you miss the version of me that would have waited by this door for you to come back." She opened her mouth. "That version doesn't live here anymore." I closed the door. Not a slam. A period at the end of a sentence I'd been writing for 8 months. She didn't leave immediately. She sat in the hallway. I know because I could hear her. After about 20 minutes, I heard Mrs. Patterson's door open downstairs. Heard her voice travel up the stairwell. "Sweetheart, let me call you a ride." That night I rearranged my living room at midnight. First time in 2 years every single decision was mine. I want to be honest about something. The door moment felt clean in the way that necessary things feel clean, but it wasn't painless. I stood on my side of that closed door for a full minute just breathing. Because I had loved Monica. Not the idea of her, not the convenience of her. I had genuinely, carefully loved her. And grief doesn't care how justified you are. It shows up anyway. It sat with me for about an hour that evening, quiet and heavy in the corner of my living room. And then I started moving furniture. I pushed the couch back to the window wall, the position I'd originally placed it before Monica said it made the room feel unbalanced. I dragged my bookshelf back from the hallway into the living room where it belonged. I went to my bedroom closet and pulled out a painting I'd bought 2 years ago from a local artist at a street market in Little 5 Points. Bold colors, slightly chaotic, full of life. Monica had called it, a lot. I hung it above the couch. I stepped back and looked at it for a long time. I made pasta at midnight. The same recipe from the night of the text, except this time I ate it at my table with a novel I hadn't opened in 7 months. I finished 2 chapters. Then I sat by the window with a glass of wine I actually liked, not the brand Monica preferred, and looked at the Atlanta skyline. The city at midnight has a particular kind of quiet that isn't really quiet at all. It hums. It breathes. I thought about my mother Carolyn. About her kitchen that always smelled like something good but never quite felt like hers. About how she gave people her space, her music, her preferences, her patience, and called it love. I understood it now in a way I hadn't before. She wasn't weak. She was just never taught that staying whole was also a form of devotion. I intended to learn what she didn't get the chance to. My phone buzzed. "Marcus, how you doing for real?" I typed back, "Like myself." For the first time in a while. Her best friend called to defend her. By the end of the call, she was defending me. Amber called 4 days after the door conversation. I'd been expecting it. Amber and Monica had been friends since college. Thick as anything, the kind of friendship where loyalty operates slightly ahead of facts. She came in fast. "Derek, I don't know what kind of power move you thought you were pulling, but you humiliated her and you need to know that." "Amber." My voice was even. "Did she tell you what the text said?" Pause. "She said she told you she needed a couple days and you completely." I can read it to you verbatim. I read Monica's exact text. Every word. Including the smiley face. Amber went quiet for a moment and then started to regroup, so I kept going, calmly, without venom, the way you present information when you've already made peace with it. I told her about the 8 months of rent Monica had never contributed to. The shoebox with Chris's name in Monica's handwriting. The Google Maps search on the open laptop. The screenshot from Chris himself. She told me you two were basically done. I didn't editorialize. I didn't perform injury. I just laid it out the way you lay out documents on a table. Amber was quiet for a long stretch after I finished. She didn't tell me any of that. "I know. You can still be her friend, Amber. I'm not asking for anything from you. I just won't let the story get told wrong." She hung up without much ceremony. 20 minutes later, a text. "For what it's worth, I always thought you deserved better." I read it once, set my phone down, and went back to the book I'd been reading. I was on chapter 6 now. I was making real progress. I changed the Wi-Fi password to 2 words. When Monica found out what they were, she called me for the last time. I want to tell you about the practical side of this because people always focus on the emotional and forget that real closure has paperwork. I called Mr. Okafor and formally removed Monica as an authorized occupant. Simple process since she was never on the primary lease, just listed as a permitted resident. I went through the building's management office to have the locks updated. I contacted my bank and removed Monica from the food delivery account I'd been funding. I canceled the streaming subscription she used daily but had never once offered to split. I did all of this with the same systematic calm I'd applied to packing her boxes. Not from anger. From completion. Then I changed the Wi-Fi password. I chose 2 words deliberately. She left. I knew it would travel. Monica had a friendly relationship with a girl named Destiny on my floor who had her Netflix login and a loose relationship with information. Within 48 hours, Monica knew the password. She called me, the last call she would make for weeks. She wasn't crying this time. She was furious in that cold, quiet way that meant she finally understood the situation was permanent. "She left? Really, Derek? It's accurate. You're being cruel." I thought about that for a moment. "Monica, I paid your rent for 8 months. I cleared half my closet. I moved my bookshelf into the hallway. I stopped playing my music. I set a table for 2 on the night you texted me from another man's car. I'm not being cruel. I'm being honest for the first time in a year. There's a difference." She hung up. Mr. Okafor called back that afternoon to confirm everything was finalized. Then, before he rang off, he said, "I have a 2-bedroom opening on the 5th floor if you ever want more space. Just for you this time." I told him I'd think about it. I was already thinking about it. 6 weeks later, she sent one final text. I read every word. Then I set my phone down and made breakfast. Monica's last message came on a Tuesday morning, 6 weeks after the 11:47 p.m. text that started all of this. It was long, 3 careful paragraphs, and it was the most honest she had ever been with me. She said she knew she'd handled everything badly. She admitted she'd been terrified of how real things had become between us, how stable, how permanent, and that instead of talking to me about it she'd used Chris as an exit ramp. She said she didn't expect anything from me. She just needed me to know that I wasn't the problem. That I was, in her words, the best thing she'd walked away from. I read it twice. Slowly. The old Derek. The one raised on Carolyn's theology of endurance, the one who believed that love meant absorbing whatever someone gave you and calling it enough. That Derek would have felt those 3 paragraphs like a door opening. Would have typed something back. Would have circled the drain beautifully for another 6 months. I set the phone face down on the counter. I turned on the stove. I made eggs the way I actually like them, over easy with hot sauce, not the scrambled Monica always requested without asking if I had a preference. I put on my jazz playlist. Coltrane first, then Miles, then an album I discovered 2 weeks ago that Monica never would have tolerated. I opened the window. Atlanta morning light came in at an angle that hit the painting above my couch, the bold, chaotic, full of life one she'd called a lot. I thought about my mother Carolyn standing in her kitchen making food for everyone else and eating whatever was left. I thought about the 14-year-old version of me making a promise in a cramped apartment that the cycle would stop with him. I looked at my bookshelf, my couch at the angle I chose, my painting, my table set for one, and for the first time, set for one didn't feel like a wound. It felt like winning. The apartment didn't change when Monica left. It changed when I stopped pretending I was okay with disappearing inside my own home. I wasn't just reclaiming square footage. I was reclaiming the part of myself that had learned, from a woman I loved deeply and will always love, that endurance without dignity isn't devotion. It's just a slow bleed with good manners. I wasn't bleeding anymore.